President Joe Biden mumbled his way through an interview with late-night ABC host Jimmy Kimmel last night. For nearly 25 minutes, Biden fielded some softball questions from the clearly Democrat-aligned host, gave answers that range from incoherent to utter nonsense. We'll take a look at what's really going on in the state of the Biden presidency in tonight's Hold the Line. Welcome to Hold the Line. I'm Buck Sexton. Look, we got a midterm coming up. That's the good news, right? So there'll be an opportunity for the American people to pass judgment on the politicians who have been in charge, the political party that has been calling the shots for the last 18 months, going on 2 years here. So that's the good news. So we always like to be positive and forward-leaning whenever possible. The bad news is that the imbeciles are still in charge for the foreseeable future. Joe Biden, the people around him are calling the shots for this country. Not working out well. And this is reflected, of course, in the realities of the various Biden administration disasters, failures, catastrophes, annoying situations that are playing out, and also in the poll numbers, because it turns out the American people are actually seeing themselves that Biden is not good at this. So Biden's on, keep in mind, hadn't done an interview in 121 days. So it's been 4 months since this guy actually sat down for an interview with anybody. And not that I think that the three-letter news networks, ABC or something, is so great if he sat down with Evening News or World News Tonight or whatever, but at least there's some theoretical journalism that would be on display. Instead, he goes right to the easiest thing possible, which is a late-night host, in this case Jimmy Kimmel, who seems like a smarmy fellow and certainly has the understanding of politics you'd expect from, say, a fifth or sixth grader. Not exactly an expert in civics, certainly not in the law of firearms or any policy thing that was discussed last night. But the poll numbers are showing that the American people think that Biden is just doing a crap lousy job. And he blamed the media, in fact, for those low poll numbers. Watch.
There's a lot of major things we've done. But what we haven't done is we haven't been able to communicate it in a way that is, let me say another way.
Well, see, that's kind of perfect. Yeah, we haven't been able to communicate it.
But look how the press has changed. Mm-hmm. Look how the press has changed.
It has changed. Oh, listen, I get it.
I know you overstand it.
Yeah.
You don't just understand it, you overstand it. But here's the deal. One of the things is that it's very difficult now to have even with notable exceptions, even the really good reporters, they have to get the number of clicks on nightly news. Mm-hmm. So instead of asking a question, anyway, it just everything gets sensationalized in ways that. But I'm convinced we can get through this. We have to get through it.
I mean, really, what the hell is he saying? I mean, just think about that for a second. This guy's whole job is talking, really. That's it. He doesn't know anything. He has no skill set beyond just communicating. And he's the president of the United States. He does have a lot of power. And I can't tell you what he thought he was saying there, that the media's insufficiently in his corner? Does he really say that with a straight face? Does he think that that's something that he can get away with anybody who has even the faintest connection to reality? But there were other things, too, that Biden said that just left a lot of people saying, wait, what exactly, sir, are you talking about? Here he is saying something about biracial couples on TV and health care. Watch.
No, I'm serious.
All right, there's something to that. Yeah.
No, but I'm serious. You turn on the TV, look at the ads. When's the last time you saw biracial couples on TV? When's the last time you saw the way, people are selling products. They do ads to sell products. And they sell products when they appeal to people. This generation is going to change everything. We just got to make sure we don't give up. There's an ability for us to do everything from increase the access to education, healthcare.
Again, honestly, what is he saying? Was he saying that we don't see enough biracial couples on TV? Because I think we actually see a lot of diversity, including biracial couples on television. But he was saying we're celebrating that. But what is he talking about? It didn't hold together. It's not clear what this guy's saying at all, but, hey, who cares? He's the president, right? And then, of course, he had some nasty partisan moments, because when you can't do your job well, what's the best thing you can come up with? Attack other people who don't have that job, aren't in power. On the issue of gun control, as we know, the Democrats are very emotionally energized. They keep shouting at everybody to do something. And we say, okay, what do you want to do? And then they say something usually that makes no sense, that wouldn't help, that's a distraction from the real issues of gun violence. And then they just keep shouting that you need to do something when you say this isn't really going to help anything. Biden claimed that he's issuing executive orders, but he's not going to issue that many executive orders because he doesn't want to emulate Trump. This was, again, what is he saying? Watch.
Can't you issue an executive order? Trump passed those out like Halloween candy.
Yes, sir.
I did. Isn't that something that could happen?
Well, I have issued executive orders within the power of the presidency to be able to deal with everything having to do with guns, gun ownership, whether or not you have to have a waiting, all the things that are within my power. But what I don't want to do, and I'm not being facetious, I don't want to emulate Trump's abuse of the Constitution.
Oh, and Trump was giving that like candy. Again, Jimmy Kimmel has a fifth grade child's understanding of politics, but he's paid millions of dollars to, basically make glorified flatulence jokes on television. And here we are now being told by Biden that he doesn't want to be like Trump in the use of executive orders. Turns out Biden's actually issued more executive orders and at a faster rate than Trump at this point in Trump's presidency. And Biden's also been blocked and overturned in the courts on a variety of executive orders. And by the way, they wanted to do that whole executive order effectively, or that bureaucratic lawmaking maneuver. It's not really lawmaking, where they were going to make everybody get a shot that had 100 or more employees. Remember that? So the Supreme Court was like, no, you can't actually do that. You can't actually get away with that. Biden also, by the way, because the economy stinks and he knows that's a huge political risk, a huge political liability for his team going forward, he's trying to tell everybody that the economy is growing really fast, fastest growing in the world. Watch.
Look, here's where we are. We have the fastest growing economy in the world. The world. The world.
Why is he repeating the world? Also, U.S. economy shrank last quarter, and if it shrinks again, we're in what's called a recession. But that's also in what's called reality, which is not the place where Joe Biden lives. He also spoke about, remember, this is the President of the United States, he wants gun control. Spoke about those 300-round magazines that we have to worry about. Watch.
You got to make sure that this becomes a voting issue. It's got to be one of those issues where you decide your position on the issue, senator or candidate for House or Senate, on what we're going to do on us with assault weapons and how able to have 300 rounds in a magazine. And I mean, what you say on those things is going to determine how I'm going to vote for you.
Yeah, I want to see some of these 300-round magazines that he's so concerned about. Show me one of those, Mr. Commander-in-Chief. We got more on all this with author and columnist David Marcus in a moment. Let's talk about protecting your data first. Companies are always promising you, they've got your privacy guaranteed, but they don't. That's why you need a new privacy and cybersecurity application tool called SECURE. It's spelled SECURE. SECURE is using proprietary encryption and offering secure instant messaging and email. With SECURE, all of your communications based on servers and data centers hosted in Switzerland without using any of the big tech platforms. Privacy is a big issue now. Without real security, people can read your emails, messages, even your bank information. SECURE will never mine your data and never ask for your phone number. You can send emails to your doctor, banker, lawyer, anyone else without being worried about whether big tech is spying on you. SECURE is your solution to stop the constant theft of your digital identity. It costs only $5 for the messenger, only $10 for the messenger and email combination package. Go to secure.com and take back your privacy today. That's SECUR.com and use promo code BUCK for 25% off. We'll be right back with more. Hold the line. There weren't a lot of laughs, but a lot of nonsensical rambling for sure from President Joe Biden last night on the set of late-night talk show Jimmy Kimmel Live. At one point, Biden called inflation the bane of our existence, saying that high food and gas prices could be offset by legislation, lowering the cost of prescription drugs and child care. Really? Take a look.
Inflation is the bane of our existence. Inflation is mostly in food and in gasoline at the pump.
That's what kills you, because it's a little billboard telling everyone how expensive everything is.
But here's the deal. You know, my dad used to say every family needs a little bit of breathing room. If you take and look at all the costs that a family has on a monthly basis, it also includes health care, prescription drugs, child care, all those things. What I'm proposing we get, and I think we can get it done, I'm proposing that we, in fact, reduce the cost of those things.
Joining me now with reaction, columnist and author David Marcus. David, good to see you.
Thanks for having me, Buck.
121 days, no interviews. This is the performance that he gives. This is the venue he chooses. What do you think?
You know, when he talks about gas prices, there's a great Woody Allen short story called "If the Impressionists Were Dentists," right? And at one point in it, Vincent van Gogh, as a dentist, is writing to his brother Theo, and he says, "I'm being sued by Mrs. Saul Schwimmer because I built her bridge as I felt it, not to fit her ridiculous mouth." That's how the Biden administration treats the American people. They deeply feel that we need to get off gas. We need to get off of fossil fuels. Everyone needs an electric vehicle. If you have the money for it, they'll even kick in a few bucks. The problem is that no matter how deeply they feel this, it doesn't fit the American lifestyle. Americans can't chew with this bridge in their mouth. They can't afford gas. They can't get to work. And it would be bad enough if the Biden administration didn't have an answer to this, but they do seem to have an answer. And their answer seems to be, shut up and suffer. We're saving the planet. Over. I don't know what to do with that, Buck.
Yeah, it's amazing to me that they want us to simultaneously believe that climate change is an existential threat, and therefore we have to have an all-of-the-above approach, emergency measures. Fossil fuel economy, the fossil fuel economy is obviously an enormous contributor to the CO2 that they think, I would argue, obviously quite wrongly, is going to destroy the planet in a matter of decades. But then they also turn around and say, well, but we don't do anything to make it harder for the fossil fuel industry. Well, which is it? And then the next day they'll say, well, they're gouging you with their price increases. So it can't be both, right? It can't be the world's going to end unless we stop using fossil fuels as, right away. But we have no problem with fossil fuels.
No, and I mean, apparently it's fine as long as we're getting it from Venezuela and Saudi Arabia. Somehow, as long as dictators are producing the oil, the climate effects are fine. And look, there's a logic behind that, right? They want Americans to pay this price for their wild Green New Deal dreams. I mean, this is just becoming more and more apparent. And Jimmy Kimmel's actually kind of trying to help Joe Biden out there, right? He's like, listen, these are billboards. As Americans drive down the street, they see this, and it's reminding them like every 10 minutes how bad a job you're doing. But there's no adjustment, and don't expect one, Buck.
Biden knows that the economy is a huge drag on his party's fortunes right now going into the midterm election season, which we're really going to hit into high gear in just a few months. And so one of the things that they've tried, one day it's Putin's price hike, it's not Biden's fault. The next day it's actually the economy's really good. We reduced the deficit by a lot. Watch.
Here's where we are. We have the fastest growing economy in the world. We have 8.6 million new jobs just since I got in office. Unemployment rate's down to 3.6%. We've reduced the deficit last year by $320 billion. This year, we're going to reduce it by $1.7 trillion.
Right.
And so we're the strongest economy, and that's allowed us at least to stay on top of and a little bit ahead of what's happening around the world.
The economy shrank last quarter. We're on the brink of a recession, but he's telling us it's amazing. And oh, by the way, comparing deficits this year to deficits when there were literal additional trillions of emergency spending because of a once-in-a-century pandemic doesn't seem very honest.
No, but apparently it's a communications problem. right? I mean, it's not a gas prices problem. It's not an inflation problem. It's not a foreign affairs problem. It's a communications problem. And Joe Biden goes on Jimmy Kimmel to try to fix it. And my favorite moment of last night's performance. Joe Biden is like a non-player character in a video game. Now there's like 8 things he's still able to say. One of them is his constant amazement at interracial, or he calls them biracial couples in television advertisements. And it's like, yeah, Joe, we drink from the same water fountains too. I imagine Jill sitting there as they watch TV, and every commercial break, Joe's just like, oh, she's married to a black man. I mean, it's a problem. He just says the same things, a little bit of breathing room, all the stuff about Bo. He just says the same things over and over. And I don't know, Buck. It's
yeah, I mean, dude, it all strikes me, David, as so phony. I mean, I sit there and I know he's going to say, not a joke, and he's going to say, I'm not being facetious, and he's going to say, just a little bit of breathing room. He's going to say, folks at the kitchen table.
Yep.
It's the same freaking speech or the same, lines strewn together every day he ever talks about it on any topic. It doesn't matter. And it's like, it's amazing this guy got away with this total bullcrap. I'm good old Joe from Scranton with the rolled up sleeves who cares about the working folks paying their bills. Joe Biden has been a swamp creature for the last 40 years. He's got a $5 million beach house in Rehoboth. His moron drug addict son got paid like $8 million by the Chinese Communist Party for promising extra access to pop. But he cares so much about the guys carrying their lunch pails to work on the assembly line? Who believes this?
Maybe he's not a moron. It seems like a pretty good payday. I mean, look, this is an old political family. That this is how old Northeast Irish politics used to work. It's a lot of patronage. It's a lot of who you can get jobs for. It's who Joe Biden's always been. But it is very amusing now to watch this play out on the national stage and have, outlets like the New York Times and CNN pretend like nothing weird's happening here.
The approval ratings, by the way, Quinnipiac, most recent poll here, 33% approval. I mean, we're getting down now to the hardcore Democrat base, right? I mean, once you're anything below 30, and the only people that approve are Democrats who would vote for Joe Biden if he took his skin off like a suit and turned out to be a lizard person from outer space.
Yeah, I mean, he's not much more popular than COVID. I mean, it's a, but that's the broader point, right? Is like under any other administration, there would have been a shift here. There would have been an adjustment. This administration doesn't care about Joe Biden. Joe Biden was a Trojan horse. He's absolutely disposable. And they will let his numbers run as low as possible as long as they can get, as many crazy progressive ideas past the goalie as possible. And they're going to do it, Buck. They're going to do this student loan thing, right? They're going to get some of this stuff. So, look, they're not stupid. I'd like to say they're stupid. They're not. They're going to get some things.
Yeah, reckless may be a better word, but that's where we are. David Marcus, appreciate you being with us.
Thanks, man.
We continue to learn more about the would-be assassin who was arrested outside the home of Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh. We'll have the latest on that story with senior editor at The Federalist, David Harsanyi, coming up. But first, let's talk about protecting your home. I don't know if you saw this, but there was a recent story about an Arizona real estate agent who found out the home she lived in was listed for sale. The problem was she wasn't actually selling her home. She was the victim of home title fraud, a devastating crime happening all over the country. According to the experts at Home Title Lock, the crime is incredibly profitable and hard to detect. An identity thief simply creates a fake title transfer for your home and refiles as the new owner. Then he can take out loans on your home or sell it. Typical identity theft services don't cover you, and neither does homeowners insurance. Home Title Lock does. Home Title Lock puts a barrier around your home's title. The instant they detect anyone tampering with your home's title, they help shut it down and help get your home back in your name. Here's what you should do. Go to HometitleLock.com and read the testimonials from FBI agents and government officials. Then register your address to see if you're already a victim and don't even know it. When you protect your home, tell them Buck Sexton sent you to get 30 free days of protection. HomeTitleLock.com. Again, that's HomeTitleLock.com. David Harsanyi stops by in a moment.
I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind, and you will pay the price. You won't know what hit you if you go forward with these awful decisions.
That was Senator Chuck Schumer back in 2020, sounding an awful lot like he's calling for consequences, perhaps even inciting violence against sitting Supreme Court justices. Suspect Nicholas Roski has been arrested, fast forward, of course, to today, and charged with the attempted murder or kidnapping of Supreme Court Justice Kavanaugh. This man was arrested less than a block from Kavanaugh's Maryland home in possession of a handgun, knife, zip ties, and burglary tools, among other things. Roski also made a deranged 911 call to police as a warning before he attempted to find the justice's home. The New York Post reports California man was incensed about the leaked Supreme Court draft opinion, and he was arrested near Justice Brett Kavanaugh's Maryland home Wednesday after he hatched a plan to kill the jurist to, quote, give his life purpose. Joining me now to discuss, senior editor at The Federalist, David Harsanyi. David, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
So this is officially someone arrested for attempted murder of a sitting Supreme Court justice. I don't know how much digging around you did, David, into the Democrat media, but this was covered, if at all, as like a page 7, midway down the fold story. In a way, it was pretty shocking. No mention of it at all last night on PBS airwaves or on PBS's website. It may have updated it today, but this happened yesterday. It was a minor news item in either the New York Times or the Washington Post. I can't remember now which one it was. But if this had been, let's say you had Sotomayor under similar threat with a pending decision, does anyone think that the media wouldn't act like this was the grave? And by the way, it is a grave threat to the institutions of our government. But it feels like the partisanship is all that really matters to a lot of the folks in the media.
Well, yeah, doesn't it get tiring to always say, imagine if it had been, a liberal who this happened to, or whatever, we'd be in the midst of a national conversation about right-wing violence. It would be front page news. We'd be talking about it all the time on every single cable network. And these people just simply don't care because they are the people who incite and instigate this sort of thing. And it's not just, I'm not saying that Chuck Schumer is responsible for the actions of a madman, but I will say that it's the constantly calling people child murderers, fascists, insurrectionists. You're talking about people on the right and dehumanizing them. So if I thought those things were true that they said, I would pick up a gun too. I mean, we'd all want to pick up guns. It would be a rational thing to do, but it's of course an insidious lie. And yet they do it all the time. And it's just this whole rhetoric that you see on MSNBC that now you hear senators. I mean, Chuck Schumer is a very powerful man. And the things he said in that clip, I mean, they're specific threats to specific people. It's just insanity.
Yeah, I mean, to anyone who would say, well, he's just talking about what, political consequences? They have lifetime appointments to the Supreme Court.
Right.
Well, how are they going to feel the fury of the public for a decision that some leftist lunatics don't like? I mean, it's not like when you're running against somebody in the, general election, you're saying, you're going to feel the fury at the ballot box. I mean, these are judges. He did have to step back from that and apologize. But I mean, I also can't forgive or forget that in the immediate aftermath of the leak of the draft opinion, David, and the protests outside some of these judges, including Kavanaugh's home, which are explicitly, clearly illegal under federal statute. And as I've explained this to anybody who asks, okay, so if I'm being prosecuted, I can hire a mob to go stand outside the home of my prosecutor screaming crazy stuff? That's the justice system we think we're allowed to have? So, Jen Psaki at the time was saying, well, there's a lot of stuff that people are upset about. So no big deal for these protests outside Supreme Court justices' homes. And it's conservative justices, let's be honest.
Yeah, of course. I mean, they would never let this happen to the others. But I'll say that, you make a good point. These are lifetime appointments for a reason. They're lifetime appointments because we don't want justices pressured by politics, by protests, by picketing, and yet the Senate leader tells people to go to the president. They actually said, I think Psaki said like something like, it's just part of the process or whatever she said. It was basically encouragement for people to go and pressure politically lifetime judges. I mean, it's an attack on separation of power. It's an attack on civility and decency. I'm basically a First Amendment absolutist. I mean, if you want to, go on the street and yell at people, from, decent, decent space, that's fine by me. But to have our leaders, to have left-wing leaders basically inciting and egging on these people, that is completely out of line. And, and that's why I think part of the reason why they don't cover this stuff.
You wrote in the Federalist, David, that normally I wouldn't blame Democrats for the actions of extremists. The problem is that not only does the left continue to push the boundaries with Schumer-like threats, but they are engaged in the relentless daily smearing of their political opponents as seditious, vote-stealing, child-murdering fascists and insurgents. If this were true, violence would be justified, but it's just a sinister lie. I mean, I do think that that we have reached a point now where you have the total normalization of, from the left, from the Democrats, of treating anyone who would cast a vote for any Republican as effectively a threat to our government. I mean, that's what this whole insurrection thing is all about. They don't care about the very foolish and simple-minded and in some cases criminal, depending on what they did, people that were actually in the Capitol on January 6th. It's about everybody. It's about everyone who ever casts a vote for a Republican.
Yeah. Have you noticed that, I've noticed that people demand that I take some kind of ownership of people who went into the Capitol. I don't have anything to do with them. I don't agree with what they did. I don't probably even agree with their philosophical ideas, if they have any ideas. I don't even know if they had any. But yet you have a person who tries to wipe out, Bernie Sanders fan tries to wipe out Republican leadership, or you have someone showing up at someone's house, or you have a summer of rioting and, and murder and the destruction of the lives of thousands of people. And no, they don't take any ownership of that. They just disconnect from it like it has zero to do with their rhetoric. Well, it can't, again, we're trying, they want us to play by two sets of rules, and that you can't have a civil society, a functioning democratic republic, when you have two sets of rules where you put, when one person doesn't show up for a subpoena, you put him in shackles and the other guy gets nothing happens to him. I mean, you just simply can't function that way. And that's literally what's happening. I know I'm jumping all over, but I think these things are connected.
Agree with you. By the way, DeSantis had a good statement on the Kavanaugh threat situation. He said it wasn't even just the fact that this guy was looking to murder someone, which is very serious in itself, that it was being done in service of changing the outcome at the judicial branch of government. And that is really, really problematic. I mean, this is someone who was looking to alter the course of this nation through violence. And it's coming at a time when Democrats are suggesting that people who don't agree with them are a threat to the government itself.
Yeah, I mean, the leak itself, most likely, almost surely, was meant to put pressure on the justices who might overturn Roe v. Wade. And the things that, a Senate leader is standing on the steps of SCOTUS yelling about consequences is trying to make them intimidate those judges. This is just, it's outlandish. I don't even know, historically speaking, certainly in modern history, nothing like this has happened. I mean, the closest I can think of is when Barack Obama sort of berated the Supreme Court for upholding the First Amendment. But other than that, I really can't think of any comparable situation to this.
David, appreciate joining us. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
A joke has led to a civil war breaking out within the Washington Post's cubicles. Writers publicly slamming the paper and one another. We have more on that with the host of the First Watch podcast, Steve Krakauer, coming up. A nasty civil war has broken out among writers at the Washington Post. It all started last week when Post reporter David Weigel retweeted a joke that read, "Every girl is bi, you just have to figure out if it's polar or sexual." Okay, a bit off color, but of course the Twitter mob was quick to react to the retweet, and Weigel, who has been suspended for a month without pay, was forced to apologize. Enter Felicia Sonmez, a Washington Post political reporter who decided to add to the pile-on as well as bash the Washington Post itself. She tweeted, "Fantastic to work at a news outlet where retweets like this are allowed." The tweets have now led to almost a week of open warfare between writers supporting Sonmez and others who are coming to the newspaper's defense. Joining me now to break this all down, host of the First Watch podcast, Steve Krakauer. Steve, thanks for being here, man.
Oh, Buck, this is a good one. This is classic.
Yeah, this is quite a melee inside of the Bezos Post. What happened? I mean, we gave the basic outline, but how'd this go down?
Yeah, no, and that's how it all started on Friday. You know, Dave tweets constantly. I mean, we have to preface all of this by saying it involves a lot of people who spend way, way, way too much time on their phones, on Twitter. Fresh air could really solve a lot of problems in this entire war that's happening. But okay, Dave's on there, tweets that joke. Felicia, who's been involved actually in a lawsuit with the Washington Post, which was recently dismissed, but still works there. She then goes on, and I don't want to, there were hundreds of tweets that she has put out about this story in the last week. She has just gone, scorched earth war against her own paper. And they have tried, the new female editor, Sally Busby, has tried multiple times to say, look, we respect what you've done. Suspended Dave Weigel, for a month without pay for a stupid retweet, which he immediately unretweeted and apologized for. Not enough. Felicia has been asked multiple times to stop arguing about this on Twitter. Maybe, have a conversation offline about it. No, that is not happening. And now, as you mentioned, there's these camps that we're seeing, right? There are the people who are saying almost propaganda messages about how great it is to work with the humans at the Washington Post and all our friends, and it's so nice. And then Felicia and her friends being like, look at these people, all they are white and entitled, and they don't know what it's really like to be at the Washington Post. By the way, Felicia is white as well. It's a total cluster, and it's hilarious from the outside.
So you had this tweet from one writer, Jose Del Real, accusing Sonmez of cruelty. He tweeted, "Fighting sexism and misogyny matters deeply to me. I will always admire your bravery in sharing your story, and I support your fight against retribution for doing so. Entirely separately, I hope you reconsider the cruelty you regularly unleash against colleagues." Ooh, what was that all about?
Yeah, Jose Del Real, who identified himself in that conversation as the only Mexican, and by the way, he's gay as well, on the Washington Post national desk. This is Pride Month. Felicia Lynn turned her sights onto him, and she just went after him, and she is still going after him. He then had to shut down his account, lock it, and when I tell you that she's not satisfied, I mean, she will not be satisfied until this guy, this gay Mexican colleague of hers, is suspended as well for daring to challenge her in that way. So yeah, he is now in her sights. There's multiple people that she's now taking it out on, including the dozens of people that we saw earlier this week tweeting messages of support for the Washington Post, saying, we're not perfect, but we try to get it right, and we try to be a place for inclusivity. None of that's good enough. All those people are Felicia just wants to just knock them down one by one. And I don't know what you can do. I mean, obviously you could fire Felicia and then she will sue the newspaper again. But it's an HR nightmare that's playing out on Twitter for everyone to see, rather than behind the scenes like a lot of these things used to do, or like normal people might actually engage with their colleagues in that way behind the scenes. I have a problem with this. No, Felicia, it's all about gaining more and more followers and more clout that she seems to be getting from this whole ordeal.
Washington Post executive editor Sally Busby sent a memo to the newsroom apparently this week. She wrote, "We do not tolerate colleagues attacking colleagues either face-to-face or online. Respect for others is critical to any civil society, including our newsroom. The newsroom social media policy points specifically to the need for collegiality." I have a feeling, though, that the collegiality clause, that's not going to be enforced the same way the "you better not be sexist or make any jokes I don't like or else" clause.
No. If it was being enforced, I think Felicia would be no longer employed at the Washington Post, or at least be suspended like her buddy Dave, who, by the way, she recently shared a byline with. She identified Dave in her original tweet storm as a good friend of hers. And this is what she's done to a person who's a good friend of hers. And I don't want to make it about Felicia Sonmez. I mean, look, she obviously, I think that there's some serious.
She seems like a lunatic.
Here.
I mean, I'll say it. You don't have to say it.
Yeah.
She seems like a crazy person to me.
I look at her, I look at Taylor Lorenz, who, by the way, has actually stayed mostly out of the fray, but is her colleague at the Washington Post, who also constantly gets herself in these sort of reality TV journalism wars that are happening and playing out on Twitter. It's about the Washington Post and their, as you mentioned, their hypocrisy in applying the rules. I mean, if you would imagine that if Felicia was doing this, but she was not who she was, and she was Dave Weigel, or she was someone else in the newsroom, and just was unrepentant about attacking her own colleagues publicly, there would be repercussions. But in this case, we're now on day 7 of this, and she's still going. She just keeps going and going and going.
I definitely have to ask you as well, Steve, about the primetime January 6th committee presentation tonight. I don't think it's going to be the greatest show on earth, that's for sure. Democrats are trying to pump this thing up like it's the Super Bowl. What are you expecting? What's going to happen?
Yeah, the biggest tell in all of this is the fact that they have moved a congressional hearing from a normal time in the morning or the afternoon to prime time, 8 p.m. tonight on every channel. And they've gone and hired the former head of ABC News, James Goldston, to produce this hearing. I mean, it's completely absurd and outlandish and so over the top and hyperbolic. It's you can imagine that this is what they have to do to try to gin up interest in it, to try to make some headlines from it, or maybe try to get some wind at the sails of the Democrats' 2022 plans. I don't expect a lot. Look, I'll be tuning in. I'm probably one of the very few people who's interested in this from my job, but I just can't imagine we're going to find out much new. And the most telling thing is, if we were going to find anything new, shouldn't they have told us already? Why do we need to hold it until 8 p.m. on Thursday night? It's not going to conflict with the NBA Finals. That was last night. That's tomorrow night. No, this is the January 6th Commission's big night to reveal something. I'd be shocked if we find anything we haven't already seen. And it's just the same rehash of what we've heard for the last 17 months about a single riot that happened at the Capitol.
I don't think it's going to be bombshells. I think it's going to be nothing burgers. But Steve, I know you're going to be watching closely, so I'll have to have you back to talk about what went down. Thanks for being with us.
Hey, thanks, Buck.
Baby formula isn't the only thing missing from shelves across the country. There's now a pet food shortage as well. What's next? We'll get into that and more in Quick Hits. Shortage of aluminum cans and manufacturers having a tough time getting raw ingredients has led to a pet food shortage across the country. Biden is still playing the mask charade game, by the way. These stories in Quick Hits. Let's get into it. Look, masks are dumb. That's right. We all know it. Think about it for a little bit. They're telling you, as of a couple days ago, the CDC was saying, mask up to prevent monkeypox. There have been 20 monkeypox cases roughly in the whole country, and it's spread by close skin-to-skin contact. But mask up to prevent monkeypox? It just doesn't make any sense, right? But the whole mask thing now is just turned into a obey. Do what we tell you to do. Mask up between bites. Yeah, that's really scientific, because when you're eating your sandwich, you're not breathing in the same air that you would be if you didn't have the mask on before that. It's all so stupid, folks. And we keep getting more and more evidence of this as political and virtue signaling instead of having anything to do with epidemiology or science. And this is a great example of it. I mean, Joe Biden, who I assume is now quad-vaxxed, right? First dose, second dose, booster, and now probably another booster, super boosted. Here he is backstage at the Jimmy Kimmel show, and you'll see he makes sure as the cameras are on that he takes off his mask to show that he's wearing a mask backstage. But why? He's walking to sit down with Jimmy Kimmel. What point does that make? Well, just, the smart people wear masks. The dumb people think. Here's Joe Biden.
The 46th President of the United States, Joe Biden.
Got to take that mask off. And why not leave it on for the interview? Why does he want to expose Jimmy Kimmel to possible COVID? Oh my gosh. It's amazing, isn't it? This is like Joe Biden, who wears a mask outside alone and then takes it off when he goes indoors in the White House, which he frequently does, by the way. Does anyone want to try to defend this? Does anyone think this is not stupid? I would love that person to say, Buck Sexton, let's have a debate over this. This is intelligent. What Joe Biden's doing makes sense. These are the people that are telling you have to mask up on planes. They're all idiots and sheep. Anyway, here's a statement from a general manager at a pet store in Minnesota. Food brands are promising they're going to get better in the next 4 and 6 months. Others saying it might be up to a year before we see some of their products back in stock. It really is kind of a wave of 1 week. It's 10 brands. Another week, it may be a brand that has a shortage. So it really depends on a weekly basis. So there is a pet food shortage out there to add to the woes we've already seen from the baby formula shortage. Kathy Hochul, by the way, has this. You know what? I'm going to say it. This is actually not bad. If they do a good job redesigning Penn Station, I would like that, because Penn Station in New York City is gross. It used to be beautiful. They destroyed what was beautiful and replaced it with something gross. Grand Central is beautiful. They managed to at least keep that the way it is. But Penn Station is like, it's a seedy, not aesthetically pleasing place in any regard. The governor of New York, who is not very smart, but maybe she can get something right here, has announced a rebuild plan for Penn Station. But she described living in New York City in a way that got some people's attention. Watch.
It'll be larger than the concourse space of Moynihan Hall and the Great Hall of Grand Central Terminal. And I love this best. 460-foot high atrium and a skylight that reminds you that, yes, the heavens are out there still, despite the feeling that you may be living in hell. Okay. Okay.
Kind of weird. I mean, New York City's not in its best moment right now, but that was just a weird statement. I didn't really know what she thought she was saying. Biden, by the way, DeSantis bashed the Biden administration for easing restrictions on Venezuelan oil, but not encouraging more domestic production. Watch.
Most gone up in Germany and a lot of these other European countries because of the policies, because they're trying to do this. And someone's going to have to explain to me how you don't want energy from your own country because of global warming, but you can get it from Maduro and some of these thugs, and somehow is that different oil? Or, I mean, what am I missing here? Of course not. It's politics. It's ideology. And it's based on this notion that somehow you can run a modern economy without using the energy resources that we have. And we were energy independent prior to Biden taking office. And now that is changing in a big, big way. And you feel it at the pump. More than ever. It's the highest I've ever seen gas in my life, and I was born and raised in Florida.
That's it for tonight's Hold the Line. The No Spin News with Bill O'Reilly is next. Shields high.